Hi everyone, welcome to the Free Speech Zone. I'm Ian Con. So once again, we're confronted with an interesting question as to how these episodes are actually named. This was to be, as you can see from the name of this video, I thought this would be episode 2 of the official season, but in fact we're up to episode 4, it seems like, according to ABC. It would appear that episode 0, the special, The Gears Awakened, was in fact episode 1. Episode 2 and 3 was the 2-hour long episode, and episode 4 is the regular length episode we've just witnessed. Now, that's fine. It's getting pretty confusing. So I'm going to continue to refer to it by my, incremented integer notation starting from 0, the way I have. So we're at number 2. That's all I can tell you. So let's jump straight into it. Round 1, Mobius versus Brutus. Look, I mean, there's a little bit of tall poppy syndrome in Australia, so, I mean, maybe that comes through in all of my my whinge about all of the various ways I don't like the uniforms, and I don't even like Witch Doctor's hat. I think Witch Doctor's hat is too much. You know, the Witch Doctor hats, all of them. But, I mean, Mobius takes it to the next level. I'm sure they're very nice people. I was looking at it going, is that a pretty... What, they could have sprung for the, not so shitty fabric on the cape there. If you're going to be the main dude wearing a green-lined cape with white contacts in, you should probably spring for the nice cape. Anyway, so I clocked later on, they're actually sponsored by a costume shop. So, okay, so that makes a lot of sense. That's sponsored by a costume shop, okay. It's costumes. Fair enough. That said... I mean, I have to say it, you need to spend a little bit less time on the outfits and a little bit more time on the robot. The thing just fell apart, unsurprisingly. Is there an inverse correlation between how much time you spend on the outfits versus how well you do in the robots? I mean, I didn't even, I didn't see much in the way of outfits from that leaders board last year, and the real end of it all. Anyway, that's something to ponder. But yeah, so Mobius versus Brutus. Mobius, it's pretty satisfying to watch him, to watch it smoke up and die. That really was, sorry if that sounds really mean. But yeah, hey, I like the down to business. I think robots look good when they are elegantly engineered. I think a robot like Bronco is one of the best looking things you'll ever see, not because somebody took to it like an artisan working exclusively in the medium of aluminium. No, it's because they made this incredible function which then lends itself to this beautiful form. It's like a wonderful motorcycle. No one's thinking to themselves, how can I make this more artful? Except maybe MV Agusta or Ducati, or which in the end I think MVs are some of the ugliest motorcycles on earth. But my point is that if you look for something just downright functional, it's so often beautiful. I mean, maybe that's just the engineering end of me speaking. But anyway, to me, I think that something like Brutus is far prettier than something like Mobius. But I may be alone in that. Except for the gold paint. I don't dig gold paint. It's like that episode of Always Sunny in Philadelphia where he's painting the chair gold. Like anyone's going to be fooled by this. Anyway. That's me. But yeah, it's good to see Brutus as the creation of, what's his name? Adam Breku? I've written it down. I don't know. Anyway, he was part of the MIT team last year with Overhaul. He's stepped out on his own this year, as you saw in the episode. He's decided, he seems like he's got a lot of good ideas as to how to build a robot. That thing had excellent control. I mean, look at that thing spin around. Incredible. Look at it go. Incredible. So I mean, this thing really knows what it's doing. He knows what it's doing. This robot is a heck of a robot. And he was confident this year, and rightly so. So yeah, that went exactly the way you thought it'd go. The only real interesting part about this this matchup I found was that the asymmetry of knowledge. So we were told by Kenny almost immediately that the projectiles that were being fired were just special effects rounds. So there was no destruction occurring based on those special effects rounds. I would doubt strongly that anyone in the pits was given that information. So if you saw that, or if word leaked back to you if you weren't watching the round, you could easily freak out that there's this weapon that they won't identify what it is. It's within the rules, and the robot just died. Oh my god, what have they got? So, yeah, there is that. That's a factor. So I think that anyone who saw that would have got shat right up. That's gonna be that would have been the only way to describe it. But yeah, so I'm very interested to see how Brutus goes. Not too sad to see the end of Mobius. I mean, it's flair. It's good to see some robots with flair. But there were, how many did we say? 206, I believe, applications this year. 206, I wrote down here. I mean, I'm glad that Mobius was very pretty, but I can't believe they couldn't find 48 bots that would keep functioning out of 206 applicants. But I'm not privy to all these sorts of things. I'd love to hear more about this sort of stuff. I'd really like it if there was a show on at the end, or at least more on the YouTube channel, stuff like that. Their YouTube channel is fantastic, but I'd love to see more. Just give us more. But yeah, so anyway, on to round 2. Boom! Son of Waiuchi versus Ghost Raptor. And this is Terry and Chuck. Terry basically seems like, in the episode, in just before this, the actual round, he seems like he's given Chuck a bunch of shit. And then later on, he seems like he retracts it after the actual fight. Because, well, you don't want to eat too many beefs, and it seems like Terry's a pretty nice guy. Look, I think that it's summed up here best by what Terry said, which is Ghost Raptor is a crappy bot. I mean, hey, it just doesn't seem like it is anything in particular. The idea of a pitched, a movable horizontal spinner, very good idea, it's a good idea. You can attack things at all different heights and from above a bit, and it's not a terrible thing. But I don't know, it just doesn't, the way it's articulated and the way the entire articulation mechanism is unarmored, almost by definition, because it's a mechanism. It doesn't have to be, but it's much more difficult to armor plate something like that. So, yeah, the way then that the actual armor plating at the front of the bot deflects the horizontal bar spinner situation into the delicate mechanism, I mean, it's almost designed to fail in its own way. Then, anyway, not to get too hard onto Chuck again, because I think I've probably been manipulated by TV production as much as anybody here into thinking that Chuck is a bad guy, even though everybody gets just as competitive. They show the camera angles that make him look really jerky. But, he is contributing to my theory that on the door, on the way into Battlebots, they have, two really big bowls, just giant 2-3 feet across. Help yourself above each one. One is just and they've got scoops, to help you get more. And there's those bags you would get, like candy things before the movies and stuff like that. But one is just filled with Adderall, and one is just filled with the best weed in the world. And you can just choose one, but you may not have both. It feels like there's some sort of, either that or one side of the pits is right next to the best marijuana dispensary in California, and somehow some sort of fumes seep in there, and the other side is right next to an underground speed lab, and the fumes from that seep into the other side of the pits, and this just happens to be the luck of the draw which side of the pits you get as to what your personality is during the Battlebots. I don't know. It just feels like it draws quite an odd diverse array of personalities. But there's a lot of people here. What's his name here? Adam. That guy chilled right out from last year. Did you guys, you remember him last year with the, he was pretty upset. He had the red hair of an Adderall person, the red, the dyed hair. That's not to say that's always a thing, but you know what I'm coming at, people. Whereas this year he's like, hey man, it's totally cool. The bot's here. I know how to build a robot. Man, watch the robot. The robot's gonna win. Okay. And the robot did win. Anyway, so yeah, I wasn't sure about Son of Waiuchi because I hadn't seen it against these newer robots where, we've got better heat treats now, we've got better alloys of steel, we've got way stronger motors and way higher capacity batteries. So I wasn't sure how Son of Waiachi, if you recall from my previous videos, how it would have done against Ghost Raptor. Just who knows this season, especially Ghost Raptor may have been upgraded. But yeah, the thing just bashed it to pieces. And then the way Chuck was all like, take him down. It was like, man, oh God. That was the moment I was like, oh, if he wins this, I'm going to be so sad. I'm just going to be like, oh, man. But he didn't win. And he wasn't the worst loser in the world either. He could have been a much worse loser than that. But the robot got destroyed in its own way. I don't know how they're going to fix it. It's probably only fairly superficial. It looked like its spine got broken. The robot itself actually breaks in a way. Like, it looks almost like the very central part of it has broken. Anyway, you can see that there. But yeah, the hope for a wild card was quite the foreshadowing, wasn't it? Yeah, but we'll get to that. Anyway, he didn't go in for another hit either. Luke was a great driver, fantastic work there. But we'll get to all the wild cards as well. But for that one, obviously, Son of Waiachi won, and I think rightly so. Wonderful victory. Round 3. Yeti versus Lockjaw 2. Calling him Lockjaw 2. Okay. Yeti's a 48-pound, 3,000 RPM drum with lifting forks but no armor. Lockjaw 2 is a spring-loaded launcher situation deal, although it doesn't seem like we've actually seen the spring loading work very well at this point. So who knows how that would actually work, if it actually ever works in combat. So it might be great. I'd love to know how the thing holds together and how it flicks other robots around, but we'll see. Yeah, but I mean, it just didn't, it didn't really feel like much of a drum spinner. I know those jaws of Lockjaw are going to be incredibly powerful and incredibly difficult to do any damage to at that kind of an angle. Once you're in there and just spinning around, it's just going to stop the drum spinning around, scrape the drum up a bit, and that's about it. And that's exactly what happened, unfortunately, and it made Yeti look like not much of a bot. Although I think that's just because it was a terrible matchup. I think it was just an unfortunate matchup for Yeti. Lockjaw somehow, again, we'll get to the wild cards, but Lockjaw managed to get a wild card, even though Yeti won it. And yeah, it's one of those wonderful little references to last year with the match versus Lockjaw versus the original Overhaul. Yeah, the ref said at the end of this match, "Okay, the match is over." Was that a reference to the late hit? Which, that was an accident. Was that a reference to that? I think it may have been. Anyway, yeah, so they're both around anyway, so it's not exactly sudden death at this point. There's still all the wild cards. We knew this would be the case, and crowd favorites would have precedence, and last year's guys, any of the last year's guys that we know and love who got kicked out early on would be back as a wild card. That was always kind of a given. Round 4. Megatento versus Poison Arrow. Okay, Megatento, yeah, my first thoughts there were, this is going to be awful. It just didn't seem like this was, I don't know, if I was Poison Arrow, I wouldn't have gone straight into the middle of the thing. Call me a crazy person. I would have maybe done my very best to keep around the back and the outside. You've got a vertical drum spinner. You can just, not go that way and you should be fine. But he chose to go in under the beetle bug thing. It's hard to say exactly how this fight went because it was cut to pieces. It was one of those really short little fights. So it's really not 100% easy to figure out how much wrestling occurred. But yeah, it went to Poison Arrow under the judgment, so yep, that's fine. I didn't see Poison Arrow actually break anything in there though. There may have been a few bits and pieces around the arena, but there wasn't much in the way of sheer carnage damage in there. So heck, this robot might be a lot better than the one last year, than Plan X. So fingers crossed. I'd love to see this one do better. I'm glad there was a camera in there though, but I tell you, that would have been like the most boring match. And I tell you, without that camera, I think that Megatento would have won the match. Because from the outside, what do you get to see? you got to see Megatento, like, enveloping completely Poison Arrow, and then just not being harmed by that. And that looks to me like a win. That it's very hard to say that when you swallow someone whole and hold them there for as long as you fancy and then let them go, that you didn't win that particular engagement. So that camera inside tipped the entire balance. So the round went to Poison Arrow on the judging. That's fair enough. It's not an easy sort of thing to call, I suppose, that kind of match. But either way, Megatento's back as a wild card. We'll get to the wild cards. Round 5. Overhaul 2 versus Cobalt. Now, Cobalt's a UK champ, I find out, which is fantastic. It just gives out some big hits, doesn't it? Even when that smoke started to flow, I was a bit worried. I thought, well, that's it. That's all over. And I just like a vertical spinner. I'm sorry, I just like a horizontal spinner. I love the massive kinetic energy that they have, the amounts they transfer to other bots. And it just, I love to see them do huge amounts of impact damage, huge impact damages. So word around the campfire about Overhaul, though, is that it wasn't actually damage that caused it to stop moving. And this is a quote from the Reddit user Factors of X. A screw from another robot that was on the floor got caught in their drivetrain. So yeah, if that's true, I'm not sure who the user is exactly, but if that is true, that is a dodgy way to go. I'm very glad they got the wild card after that, because otherwise that would have been a terrible way to go out, just having a dirty floor take you down. That'd be a bit rude. But yeah, that smoke coming out of Cobalt, not too bad. Didn't turn out to be that bad at all. It was probably just a defective cell in one of the actual batteries, something like that. It really isn't. It didn't seem to actually cause it any difficulty of moving around. Again, it was a very quick little wham bam, thank you ma'am overview of the match. It was edited that way, so I don't really know 100% if it did have some other issues, but the way it was shown, it didn't appear to have any issues at all. So it was either some sort of a redundancy or a modularity that was well designed either way. So it could either be switched out or it wasn't needed if it failed. So very good. Round 6, Sawblaze versus Razorback. Another one that lends credence, lends some weight to the idea that there's the bowl o' candies on the entrance. Yeah, how's that drum working for you? Come on! Yeah, not 100% sure about the trash talking. As I said last week, it's just not really cricket, is it? I never learned baseball ethics, not ethics, baseball, behaviors. To me, they're outlandish and crazy. To me, cricket is how you behave when you want to hit, a ball thrown at you with a stick. Yeah, and you have to be a lot more polite than that. So, I don't know, I find it a bit of a weird way to go with it. Especially when the Americans do it to the British teams. Like I will say, when Tombstone did it last year, with that "you want more" thing that he did to Radioactive, and they just went, I just didn't understand what he wanted them to say. He was like, what? I'm busy with my robot. Jesus. Did you speak? Okay, good. I'm going to go back to this now. Yeah, it was Razorback by a judge's decision. And I think that's fair enough. The way Sawblaze's primary weapon stopped working when it got a great opportunity there to really get in. I think its primary got hit by Razorback's drum. So the thing about Razorback is it is a Swiss Army bot, and it was operating as a drum spinner for this match, which I think turns out to be a great decision. Because of the way it worked out. And yeah, once again, it was all about attrition. Who built the bot that could withstand the damage from the most directions and in the highest loads and the most number of times, etc. And yeah, 100%, I got to agree with the judge's decision for Razorback. Brings us to round 7. Red Devil versus Rex. Red Devil's an interesting bot, isn't it? Didn't really get to have much of a think about it or a look at it. It sort of just looks like a red bot. It's articulated in the center in a very interesting way, so it can be quite long. Again, didn't really see much of exactly what happened in this match. It was glossed over. But But yeah, it's articulated in the middle, some sort of a vertical spinner. It had a saw on it this time, which I guess the difference between a vertical saw and a spinner is just the number of teeth. But still, you feel the difference with me. But yeah, versus Rex. I mean, I love that this guy had this idea in a dream, but it doesn't handle, doesn't steer. It just goes off in various directions. Yeah, it may or may not be, much of a robot, the old Rex, but it's out for this year. I love that he's in it. He's given it a good red hot go and fantastic, but I just don't think it's a good design of a robot. There's all this walking around stuff and weird lumbering gaits where you drag one leg and you try and push it with the other, and it's like a knee because of the angle it's at, but it's never quite a knee because it doesn't bend. Don't know about any of that. It might be better on gravel and those sorts of materials, but on steel. Anyway, but yeah, Red Devil obviously triumphed mostly by pushing. And yeah, that's fantastic. But look, I think that next week or next time when we say Red Devil, I mean, my thoughts are that a vertical or a horizontal spinner would completely destroy the thing. The tracks are quite exposed. The first thing you come up against is the tracks. Let's think, once again, you have to fight Tombstone. So those tracks are just going to get torn to pieces. That's fine. It's going to be spectacular to see, but let's not get too excited. Brings us to round 8. Rotator versus Witch Doctor. Okay. You can't really be testing against things as tough as Witch Doctor with just filing cabinets. I'm glad that he tested. And he sort of, that story about his dad having cancer, I was like, oh, he's lost his dad, the poor bugger. His dad's dead. And they worked on it together, and this was the last thing he did with his dad. And yeah, this is going to be really... And he's like, oh, my dad's alive. Yeah, he's fine. He's not fine. I'm joking around. But I was like, I kind of almost felt like, cheated is the wrong word. I felt like there was a red herring. That's all I'll say. I won't say cheated. But yeah, Rotator versus Witch Doctor. Look, Witch Doctor is quite a powerful bot. We've seen that time and time again. This year, it has a capacity to self-right, which was its major flaw. It was its whole thing, was it couldn't self-right. Now, this year, it can. We've got a whole big thing to look forward to in the future with Witch Doctor here, now that it's got that mechanism. It nearly got Tombstone. Well, you can't ever forget that, only for the fact that it couldn't self-right. So yeah, once again, this whole you're going down is okay. That's all good. That's all fine. They seem like they're mates or whatever. It's just very American, and that's fine. But I know it's an American show. Good for them. But it gets me going. Whoa, not sure about any of that. Yeah. So that was Witch Doctor by a country mile. And yeah, so I'm looking forward to seeing Witch Doctor come again. So that's basically it. It was a very short. Well, it wasn't very short. It felt short because of all the quickened matches. Next week should be okay, although again it's only going to be a short round with only four rounds altogether. So the next week is the start of the round of 32. We'll have 4 of them next week, 4 of them the week after, and then 8 of them the week after that. 8 matches, that is not bots. So yeah, however, before we get to all of that, let's talk about wildcards. So, we've got some really interesting and silly decisions here. Okay. I guess there are only so many that made it that are repairable. And this becomes the big factor, I guess, as much as it's like, well, the judges have chosen this guy. There's probably been a little, sign-up sheet as to who reckons they can get their bot going. And then they'll put those up, and if they get 8 of those... cool, there's your wild cards. And if they get 10 of those, well, now we have to draw 8 out of a pool of 10. I feel like that's what must have happened here, because some of these entries... again, a lot of them are people who've competed before, which is fine. It feels like it's a little bit of a leg up for those who've already done this for quite some time, but either way, that's fine. So we've got Blacksmith, which, your hammer broke, you dummy. So, see about all that. We've got Ghost Raptor, which I thought that whole thing, Terry, his whole thing was he got Ghost Raptor out of the tournament. Finally, that's it. That's all he wanted to do. Well, no, apparently he didn't get Ghost Raptor out of the tournament. So Ghost Raptor's back. Bombshell, which, okay, all right. I'd like to see how that goes. It was a Swiss Army bot that we never got to really see anything but the axe. Really like to see what else we have there. Lockjaw, I'd like to see that flipper work. I'd like to see it do what it says on the tin. I would like to see it, it lock its jaw onto something and then flip it around, do some stuff, do some Lockjaw-y stuff. So, great, love to see that. Lucky, good. Flippers are very spectacular, and they do throw the cat amongst the pigeons. I'd like to see what Lucky's capable of. Again, against the hammer, it had to use that armor on the top, and it was an interesting looking robot when it had that rubberized armor. So yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing it go in its birthday suit, so to speak. That'll be an interesting one. Megatento is back again. When it's a judge's decision and the robot's working fine, I think it's half of it is which robots can work fine and which ones are popular with the crowd. And popularity with the crowd is, you need to be known by the crowd in order to be popular with the crowd, especially the home viewer. The home viewer doesn't know any of these damn people. They haven't been checking the website. They're not on the Reddit. They don't know any of this stuff. So, I get it. It's got to be someone from last year to be that popular with the viewer. Which brings us to Nightmare. I don't know. Maybe Nightmare is like some Americans' joke that Australians don't get. I'm prepared to accept that Nightmare is like a Hershey's bar or a Chevy. We have things very similar here, but you never, you just sort of, it's not the same at all. I know Chev and Holden are the same damn company, and I know you can get Hershey's Kisses here at Bloody Woolies too, but that is not the point. The point is that it just doesn't feel like, anyway. So yeah, Nightmare, I don't understand. I guess it chucks stuff a long way. It's been in the competitions, these robot competitions a long time. But I think it proves itself as it doesn't write itself. I can't see how it can ever compete properly unless someone screws up and lets it come right at them, in which case, okay, that's fine. But yeah, I don't get it. Glad to see Overhaul as the final wild card, though. I am very glad to see that he gets another chance. He builds a good bot. He nearly made it last year. I know, I didn't like the kitty ears. I still don't like the kitty ears. I won't lie to you. I just don't like the kitty ears. Not like in a semiotic sort of anything it says about you, nothing like that. Just aesthetically, I think they look like shit. That's cool. Overhaul looks good enough to make up for it. So that's absolutely no problem. But yeah, so after those wildcards, I'd like to talk about a couple of the bots we didn't see, just to tie up the loose ends, because there are quite a few here that, look, I really wanted to see, especially the dentist. I'm sure there's a joke in there about me seeing the dentist, but apparently there was some sort of technical fail. I tried to check it on their website, but the entire robots section is currently not working, which I'm sure is some sort of, they've had to, no doubt, sign non-disclosure agreements about the specifics, if they're in the show, if they're not in the show. Maybe someone else drops out, they come back in. I have no idea what happens there, but it's all a bit too tight-lipped. Call me paranoid, but it's the sort of thing that if they just said, yeah, look, they're out, we'd probably know about it by now. Whereas the fact that they've just, shut down all communication feels a little bit like something's coming back. There might be like one of the intruders in Big Brother or something like that. Praying Mantis was disqualified for some reason. Don't know why. Helicopter. Again, I would have really liked to see what happened there with the rolling hammer, full body spinner situation. It was a fire safety problem, apparently. So there were 3 attempts at passing fire safety, and I think it caught on fire all 3 times. That's my understanding. Correct me if I'm wrong there. Again, Clockwork L'Orange was disqualified for some reason that we don't know about. And Road Rash, again, couldn't find anything about exactly what happened to them. Would have loved to see what happened with that linear reduction motor. That's what I'm talking about. That's how you exploit the fact that you've got a metal box. That is a beautiful way to do it. But again, it just didn't work out. I just would have loved to see it. I would have loved to see the thing glide around and have more grip than it was supposed to have. It could have worked out to have just been a giant gimmick and use way more power than you could possibly imagine to just for locomotion. And that's probably the case. There's lots of reasons why wheels are a really good idea. They're very efficient. They're lovely things. So maybe that was just, it was so massively inefficient that batteries were a problem, something like that. I'd like to hear all these breakdowns, and I'll bring them to you when I do. But yeah, that brings us up to the round of 32. Now, the round of 32, as I said before, split over 3 big weeks. Well, 2 weeks and a third big week. So next week, we've got 4 matches. We've got Bronco versus Chrome Fly. I'm going to call that one for Bronco. I just don't see how George Matus can really... okay, maybe he's got a few extra of the actual spinners, the horizontal bars. I hope he does, because otherwise it's going to be a really short match. He must, because otherwise there's no primary weapon. He'd be counted out, surely. So we'd have to say that he's replaced those. But I just don't understand how there's a possibility that is going to do much to Bronco. It just doesn't seem like it's much of a horizontal spinner. Yeah, so again, call that for Bronco, absolutely. The next one here we have is Minotaur versus Blacksmith. Yeah, I don't even know if I need to say anything about this. It's just, yeah, it's gonna be the biggest, splattiest. Bits of Blacksmith are going to be sent all around the arena. There are going to be bits of hammer and bits of armor and bits of shit from here to there to forever, I would say, because my understanding is Minotaur does have some armor on the top, so it's not exactly completely, vulnerable on the top the way something like Yeti would be. So we'll see how all this goes. But I would just so hugely, I would put actual physical money on Minotaur if this wasn't a competition whose result was already known, and which, isn't necessarily 100%. I won't go down that path, but you get exactly what I'm trying to say here. It's a TV program, people. So, make up your mind what that means. But let's just say I would put real money on Minotaur versus Bronco if I was there. Minotaur versus Blacksmith, for Minotaur to win. I don't know what I'd say versus Minotaur versus Bronco. That's a question I might have to answer in another day. Witch Doctor versus Red Devil. Now, we didn't really actually see very much of Red Devil, as I said before. That said, I don't see what it's going to do to Witch Doctor. I have to call it for Witch Doctor. As soon as Witch Doctor, the vertical spinner, actually catches a part of those tracks, they're going to get destroyed. Treads, you know what I mean. And Yeti versus Lucky. It's not as easy a one to pick as all that, is it? Both fairly newcomery. I would say it's going to be pretty difficult. If Yeti's arm dealies are working properly, it's going to be more difficult than you think for Lucky to get underneath it from the front, but from the side, no problem whatsoever. It's going to be a driving contest. I couldn't make an actual recommendation, but if you're one of those types who has to place a bet, I'd probably say just go for Lucky, because, sounds lucky. Punk. So we'll get to the week after that and my thoughts on those particular bots next week. But so sorry it's a short episode this week, guys, but it's a short match, it's a short week. So once again, thank you very much for joining me here on the Free Speech Zone. I'm Ian Conn, and this has been the last of the qualifiers for Battlebots. Next week it'll be the first episode of the round of 32. Join me then. Keep watching Battlebots. Take it easy, guys.